I'm having some space issues on my hard drive right now, so if this video conks out, that's the reason why. You won't know about that because I'll have to re-upload it. But I'll try and keep it condensed. Most of the stories on the LBC today, leading Britain's conversation, um, was about the Insulate Britain protests. Now, I'm not going to talk at great length about that. I've already spoken a lot about them and what I think of them, and I'd just really be reiterating myself. But it looks like it's escalating, and I suppose it sort of ties into what I'm going to talk about because we're talking about law and democracy and justice and so on. So, just briefly say that in our society, rights come with responsibilities, and I think that directly hurting the public should warrant tough consequences. Now, the case I'm going to be talking about also involves an offence. But I'm just going to read out the report and then share some of my thoughts. This is from LBC, and the report is by, bear with me, Patrick Grafton Green. London football coach jailed for 25 years in Dubai over cannabis oil found in car. Billy Hood, 24, from Notting Hill, was arrested on January the 31st. So this story is only coming to light now, really. After officers found four small bottles of CBD vape oil, which is legal in the UK, in his car. He had only recently moved to the country. He told campaign group detained in Dubai he was shocked, scared, and confused when police suddenly turned up and demanded to search his home and car. When he found the oil, which he claimed to have been left in his car by a friend, he was taken to an isolation cell in the police station where he stayed for 14 days without any hygiene products. So you can imagine it's pretty grim conditions. He said despite not knowing the language, he was forced by police to sign a confession written in Arabic. He has been jailed for trafficking, supplying, and possession of CBD vape oil. Rada Sterling, CEO of Detained in Dubai, said forcing coerced confessions are commonplace in Dubai. Mr. Hood's mother, Breda, said, I have hidden myself away, crying and crying when I imagine what our sweet boy is going through. It's the worst stress I've ever been through and feel helpless. And I feel helpless. His brother, Alexander, added, it's been difficult to cope with Billy's ongoing detention and the idea that he could be in a UAE prison until he's 50. Bear in mind, this is 25 years. It's a quarter of a century, a very long time. Billy is a healthy, fitness-focused guy. Unlike other kids, Mum never had to worry about him getting into drugs or smoking. It's one thing if you've done something wrong, but a whole other story when your life is being ruined as though you're a criminal and you're not. Foreign and Commonwealth Office spokesperson said we're giving consular support to a British man who's been imprisoned in the UAE. Mr. Hood's family is appealing against the sentence and have launched a fundraising page to pay for legal fees. And that's the report. I found that page incidentally, and I am considering donating to it. Um, okay, I'll just cut to the chase. I do think that with some British nationals, there is a very painful naivety in going abroad, um, particularly to countries that are known to be have zero tolerance on drugs. Particularly thinking of the Gulf states, but also Southeast Asia and Latin America, South America more specifically. There's been a number of high-profile cases in recent years. There was two girls from Northern Ireland imprisoned in Peru. There was the case of the British woman who had excessive painkillers, she said, for her Egyptian boyfriend. She was arrested in Egypt. There's been numerous cases like this. I don't think he'll get 25 years, or rather, I don't think he'll serve 25 years. Probably what will happen, he will either serve a few years and then be reprieved, or he'll be reprieved fairly soon. I hope that's the case. Um, But what I always notice with these sort of cases is the comments, usually from British people, incidentally, tends to go like their country, their rules. If you're going to be stupid, then you pay the price. And there's a sort of callousness and a coldness about the responses. Now, my view is, if he's guilty, then he should face some consequences. It's disrespectful to knowingly break the law in another country, right? But this is cannabis oil. This is not cocaine. This is not heroin. Um, and even if you think that the sentence is acceptable, the fact that there is a forced confession involved, it's corrupt. It's absolutely corrupt. I mean, there's no assumption of innocence. And that's what people forget in these situations. They sort of think, well, their country, their rules, but they're forgetting that these legal systems are frankly pretty corrupt. There's very little due process in terms of access to a lawyer or anything like that. So it's all very well to sort of say, oh, well, he's stupid, he broke the law, he should know better. But what if you have a situation where someone has been planted with drugs? Now, I'm not saying that is the case here. But people don't stop to consider that sort of thing, which is very possible in countries that don't have the sort of legal process where we have. Now, I've been very critical of the British justice system, paradoxically, for being too soft often. But I think that, put it this way, people say it's their country, their rules. Well, I'm a British citizen. In this country, we have freedom of expression. I can say that granted is their law. That is, it's strict, it's harsh, but it's my right as a British citizen to say it's brutal and backward. I mean, frankly, the Gulf states don't particularly appeal to me. They've got gleaming skyscrapers, they've got plenty of entertainment, they've got zoos and they've got water parks and all that sort of thing. Um, but frankly, they don't appeal. I've always found them pretty artificial. Um, and it's not just about Western tourists. Consider the way they treat Filipino maids. I mean, there have been high profile cases of Filipino maids being employed by Gulf employers and effectively treated like slaves. There's one high profile case, I raised awareness of it. I mean, it was in the press, but it's one of my most viewed videos actually. I've got over 20,000 views for that video. um, the employers took away her passport. They were treating her like a slave, much longer hours than she was supposed to be doing. Disgusting treatment. Um, South Asian laborers, predominantly men from Bangladesh, Pakistan, they're effectively treated like slaves. All those gleaming skyscrapers, it's effectively on the backs of slave labor. So I personally would think carefully about spending tourist money in those countries. Um, but I think, unfortunately, a case like this should just be a reminder that you just cannot gamble in those countries. Even if he thought it was harmless, it's like painful naivety. If his friend, put it in his car, that, some friend getting him into that sort of situation, um, I just think that people need to be very, very careful when they go to these countries. Um, Incidentally, with the news earlier this year that Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid, the way he has allegedly treated his wife and daughters, maybe we should have a bit of tit for tat. If they're going to throw such a harsh sentence at one of our citizens, then maybe we should say, well, wait a second, the way you've treated your wife and daughters violates our values on, for example, female rights. So maybe he should be made a persona non grata. I mean, he is still going to equestrian events with the Queen. On the other hand, there is a way to look at that. The fact that we have close ties to these states geopolitically, paradoxically, although they are in stark contrast to our values, their whole approach to human rights is in stark contrast to our values. On the other hand, it could be advantageous in the sense that when British citizens get into trouble in those countries, the fact that, there is a sort of bond between our monarchy and their monarchy can be used to advantage, i.e., a sort of leverage to grant a reprieve. Probably he will be granted a reprieve, but I actually think there needs to be some sort of PR campaign in this country. Anyone who wants to go to the Gulf states or any other country that carries extremely harsh penalties for drugs or other offences, I think, I mean, people should know that they should do the research before going to a country. I think that there should maybe be, advertisements in newspapers. Thinking of traveling to Dubai as a tourist? be aware that they have extremely harsh drug rules, something like that. I mean, it should be common sense, but some people are painfully naive. And I think they see the Gulf states as being pretty much like Ibiza. It's not. Even though Dubai and the UAE isn't quite as conservative as Saudi Arabia, it's still an Islamic state. And people just cannot gamble in these countries in terms of what they think, oh, that's fine. It's just. And I've seen this naivety directly. When I was in China, I saw Westerners using cannabis in southern China, in Guilin, which is kind of a laid back place. It's not like a conventional Chinese city. There's a lot of Western tourists there, specifically Yangshuo County. I saw people, some Chinese as well, but maybe because the police are corrupt down there, that they sort of turn a blind eye. But the thing about China is you'll have that situation where it's laid back for a while and suddenly there's a big crackdown. But I saw some of these Westerners and the blasé attitude they had was just so naive. I'm thinking, are you insane? You're smoking joints in China? I mean, I didn't inform on them or anything like that because it was kind of in crowded bars, but I just looked at them in total like, You're insane. You're gambling with your life effectively, considering it's a death penalty in some Asian countries. That's what it is. But in other cases, like I say, people who are sort of callous will say, "Oh well, serves them right." They're forgetting that if someone is planted with drugs or if they're set up, it's very, very difficult to clear their name. I mean, anyone who's ever seen Bangkok Hilton will know what I'm referring to. And we need to be careful in terms of how because obviously the government cannot just come in and sound like they're lecturing and, oh, well, we're better than you when it comes to human rights. We are, incidentally. I don't believe in moral equivalencies. I believe we are far more advanced. I don't care about their gleaming skyscrapers. I care about the slave labor that's happening. Um, and we may not be perfect in this country, but at least there is generally opposition to it. At least we have a free press to report these things when they happen. Um, so for me personally, I would be reluctant to spend money and thereby legitimize such a state. But then again, maybe I'm a hypocrite because I've been to China. I don't know. Um, People just need to be very, very careful. I hope this young man is reprieved, and I hope it's a lesson. Do not take any chances. Because if you're in trouble in those countries, you can't rely on a British sense of due process. It doesn't work that way. Unfortunately, you're going to have very, very minimal rights. And the Foreign Office has limited power in terms of assisting you. So I just hope this young man is reprieved. But I will say this, people who are sort of jumping on the bandwagon and saying their country, their rules, in my country, I believe I have the right to say, well, they're backward rules. Their attitude to human rights stinks. Okay? And there's little we can do about it. But we have freedom of expression. And if I think that something blatantly violates human rights, I will say so. And I believe that 25 years for cannabis oil is brutal. I think it's far, far too harsh. Um, if he's guilty, I think he should face some consequences because he's knowingly broken the law of the country that he's in. So he should face some consequences. He should be deported. He should maybe pay a hefty fine, something like that. 25 years in jail? I think that's brutal. Absolutely brutal. Anyway, that's my take. I'm gonna send his family something to help with the legal fees. If you feel the way I do, then please consider that. It'll be on Just Giving. You might disagree. You might say, well, he broke the law, but I'm considering his family. I don't think that being foolish means someone should deserve to have a quarter of a century behind bars for something like that.